Hello, 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 and welcome to week 10 of Steve's Shack. As you can see to my right, your left, I have with me as a co-host this week, Devon Holly, the original commish. Let's get right to it. Welcome to the Shack.
Thank you for having me, Steven.
How is it? Everything you thought it would be?
Absolutely.
All right.
Very much enjoying it so far.
So far, it's a great experience.
Yeah, I'm very excited to get into it.
There's food, there's friends.
Yeah.
It's everything fantasy football is supposed to be, in my opinion. First things first, let's get to it. Hard-hitting questions.
All right. Bring it on.
Okay.
I'm ready.
I like it. How do you feel about your season so far?
You know what? I was a little nervous at first, but I do have a tendency, historically, to start out a little bit slow every season. I have reeled off 3 straight wins now. Just took first place in the Red Division, so I'm feeling pretty good going into the final home stretch of the season here. 4 games to go.
What do you credit as the strongest element of your team?
That's a very tough call. I feel very good about both my running backs and my wide receivers. I know you've said this many times in the Shack how much you fear my running back core.
Yeah.
Adrian Peterson, Michael Turner, both very hard, good runners, both ranked in the top 10 fantasy-wise, but you can't overlook those receivers. Everyone knew coming out of the draft Megatron was going to be big, but look at how Steve Smith came on, Cam Newton throwing him the ball now. Brandon Marshall's kind of been my number 3. This past week finally broke out. Had probably the best game he's had all year.
Yeah.
So he's definitely up there. So, I mean, I feel very good about both those core groups of players. I can rely on them week to week.
Really, with the running back core and the wide receiving core that you have, once the bye weeks are gone, I kind of feel like you should just throw every other bench spot you have at quarterback and defense and kicker, because you're never going to have a starting position for anybody else outside of injury.
Well, and yes, and that's the key outside of injury. You never know what could happen. So you got to be ready at any times in this game. You never know when that big guy's going to go down. You got to replace him. So
I'd say I consider you to be the league historian. I think each of the core 4 kind of has their own niche.
Yes.
And yours, I see you as kind of the guy who upholds the hallowed sanctity of the league, as you know, as it relates to just being a really historical thing for us, as being just a piece of the story of our friendship, you know.
Yes.
And so I want to kind of delve into that. What's your fondest memory in DFL history so far?
Boy, to pick just one is, it's very tough to do. I mean, this league has been through a lot.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of owners come and go.
Yep.
I mean, the list is pretty long. With that, a lot of great rivalries have come about because of it. I would say, like you and Jesse, that's kind of the reason we did that whole division format in the first place. We want to establish that rivalry with you and Jesse, me and BG.
Mm-hmm.
I know between me and Jesse personally, we've always kind of had a thing between each other where he always had my number every single year, even though I was the much better team. He'd still always beat me. Fortunately, this year I beat him, so
there you go.
I was happy about that. I mean, there's been a lot of progression. We've had scandal. I mean, this league has survived a lot, I would say.
Yeah.
When you thought maybe it'd be like a 1-year thing and we'd give up. I mean, here we are, 12 years, 13 years later.
Yeah.
And we're still going strong. So, I mean, that's a testament to the commitment that the 2 of us have made, that everyone else has made to the league. So I think
the Devon related memory, if I was going to single out one that I remember the most, is when you wiped the draft board clean.
All right. In my defense, we were doing that on Hedgie's crappy computer, which was seriously outdated and froze up on a regular basis. He had this stupid power strip on the floor right next to my foot.
Totally lied about it.
Well, we didn't lose the whole draft.
No, you're right.
But everyone did freak out for a while, and it wasn't many years later until I came up with the truth. But you know what though? Like I would say, like the second championship I won. Like I won the title in 2001, and I won it again recently. I think it was maybe like 2008. That season, I only went like 7-7.
Yeah.
Snuck my way into the playoffs and just went on a tear through the rest of it.
Just
captured
get
the
in.
title.
Yeah.
Because I've always had this terrible problem of making the championship and then losing. I think I've appeared in 6 championships total, and I've won 2. The year hadn't gone the way I'd hoped, but then, you know, when your team catches fire, I mean, it goes.
It's a great feeling, yeah.
And when it happens late season, I mean, that's huge. And that's why, you know what, it's good to point out that no team, no matter how bad your season might be going so far, you're never out of it, because you never know when those guys are just going to catch fire and go off.
No, totally.
So that's why, you know, you never give up on a season, you know.
Wow.
No matter how, well, okay, within reason, I guess. It's never over till it's over. So.
That's true. What would you say, as an owner, your low point has been?
Probably the year before I won the second champion. I know there was one year I missed the playoffs, which was definitely a low spot because I took pride in saying that I had made the playoffs every single year I've been in this league. And so to not make it, especially as like a core 4, I don't know what it is about being a core 4 member, but there's like this certain hierarchy about it. Like you're almost, there's like this expected thing from you. Like you're expected to do well. You're expected to make the playoffs.
Have
you're
a good
expected
draft.
to be a contender. You're supposed to be one of the teams. And so when that doesn't happen, I mean,
It's a severe disappointment.
Yeah, it hits you pretty hard.
If there's one team that you want to beat in any given week, who's it going to be?
Well, right now it's probably BG, just because he beat me twice this year.
Historically.
Well, even historically, me and him have had a pretty good rivalry over the years. I probably want to beat Jesse more so than you, just because that's just kind of formulated itself over time.
Yeah, a lot of controversy over the last couple weeks.
Yes.
What are your thoughts about things like should future draft picks be an option just on principle? Should we relook at the way we approve trades in this league? Some of the things that have come under fire
right
now.
I do think it's definitely something we have to look at. I mean, I know a concern I had right off the bat was maintaining the competitiveness and the integrity of the league.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's something I was very concerned about at first. From either side, whether you were giving up that big name player or you're giving up that draft pick for the next season, because, I mean, either way, you are potentially putting yourself at a very serious disadvantage if that pick doesn't work out with you. And if we take your trade for an example, I mean, you were going to get Arian Foster, a very good running back, but at the same time you're giving up your first pick for next year, which at this point we don't know what that's going to be yet.
Yeah.
But depending on what that is, I mean, there could be 12, 13 picks ahead of that until you finally get your first pick.
Yep.
And so that's a lot of guys off the board by the time you get to pick your first player.
Yeah.
And from the other side, I mean, Jared giving up Arian Foster, I mean, that was the guy finally coming into his own, finally putting up some good numbers. Somebody that could potentially dig him out of this hole that he's in, like last place in the division. So, I mean, I understand, like, you go 1-7, you start looking at next year, but I've always been a firm believer that, you keep pushing along, even regardless of how bad it looks.
How does that make you feel about the idea of a draft bracket or even a draft lottery bracket, something for those kinds of teams?
If the league decides to go that way, I would have no problem with that, just because, there's been arguments that there shouldn't be any need for incentive to continue to try, but that would definitely give teams that have had a bad year a reason to continue to play.
Yeah.
Just because they're playing for something.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll continue to change their lineups and try to win. If you're playing for something like, say, a first round or a first overall pick or whatever. So, I have no problem with that whatsoever. I still feel like the draft order should stay based on previous season record. the way teams finish, league champion picks last, worst team, or if we have a consolation bracket, consolation winner gets first pick.
So the other matter, the trade approval process. What do you think about our current trade approval process? What do you think? Do you think it could use tweaking, or how do you feel about the controversy that surrounded that?
I feel like it's a very good issue to get into, just because up till this point, we've always had kind of one commissioner, like ever since like I kind of stepped down, like you kind of took it over, but I've kind of helped you out. Jesse's kind of come into the mix now. He's kind of helped out too. So with trades involving one of us, someone else can approve it. But I think I don't think it's a bad idea to suggest like a commissioner by committee idea where multiple people talk about a trade, vote on it, or even I know there's been proposals to put everyone in a league-wide vote regarding a trade. I mean, that would be a little bit tougher to enforce, but just so that everyone has a say in the matter. I mean,
so what would you support as an option?
Well, at this point, I feel like it's probably a lot easier to enforce like a commissioner by committee idea. Put like 4 people kind of in charge of that. I mean,
so you're in favor of the core 4 commissioner by committee option?
Yeah.
No?
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Do you think it should be the idea that BG put out there with 3/4 and everybody votes on every trade regardless of whether or not you're a part of it, or do you think it should be 100% approval but you only vote on trades of which you are not a part?
I say, if that is your trade, you no longer have a say in the vote.
Yeah.
Because obviously that's a conflict of interest.
Yep.
But still have that 100% unanimous vote from the other 3, I guess you could say.
I think it'll be
Or
interesting
push it
to
through.
get BG's perspective on this next week.
Yeah.
What he...
We'll see. Well, yeah, I mean, we'll see what he has to say. I know he likes to be very cut and dry on these matters.
Definitely.
So.
I think BG would be a great addition to a Core 4 committee because he obviously has very strong viewpoints, and he has a viewpoint that's, he brings a fresh perspective, something that, me and Jesse oftentimes come to the same conclusion. We do disagree on things, but oftentimes we come to the same conclusion, just in different ways. BG oftentimes comes to a very separate conclusion. He'll look at the same set of facts and see something and read a completely different story than we did. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's a refreshing thing. I think that's something that you get in a commish by committee situation that you don't get in just a 1 or 2 guys just trying to manage everything themselves.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with that, especially when it comes to things like trades. I mean, one person could view a trade as very equal, very fair. One person be like, wait a second. This guy's performing way better. I know there's going to be some level of bias when it comes to judging these trades. Like, if it's a guy with your own division, obviously you want to make that team better. That's someone you're directly competing against.
But that's why I think we have the divisional equity with the 2 guys.
Right, and I think the way that the proposal to create it like that, 2 teams from each division, I think that's a very fair way of doing it.
All right, well, it's been great to get a little bit more perspective on Devon, the league member, not just the Core 4 stalwart. Very excited to see how the rest of your season goes.
Me too. Hopefully for the best.
Yeah, definitely.